You can't keep me cooped up in here, okay? I am a peacock. You gotta let me fly.
Welcome to the Poppycock Podcast, where the topics don't matter and we're not experts. Today I'm joined by two birthday boys, Samuel and Daniel.
Don't call us birthday boys. That sounds Best case scenario, that we sound like children. Worst case scenario, perverts.
Oh, speaking of horrible children, because I was thinking you could be both. Do you remember the TV show The Flash? In the flashbacks, there was young Barry Allen, who watched his mom get killed, and but I saw the impossible. So that kid died in April. He overdosed on drugs. He was 16 years old and had become an opioid addict at age 13.
What?
People in Canada are hardcore messed up, apparently.
Jeez, he really wanted to be the fastest man alive.
He was like, I don't understand, my mom isn't dead and I can't run fast yet. But yeah, no. Because I was like, oh, he died, that's so sad. He drug overdosed. Wait, how old was he? Well, he started when he was 13. What is going on?
So, I guess you could say he really did see the impossible.
And with that, I want to hit our first topic of something that makes me very excited. So, back when The Mandalorian was first airing, there was the episode where they go back to Tatooine, which is sort of like the fan service episode, really. But I felt like at that point we'd had enough new content and new characters that we kind of earned a bunch of hey, look, it's that same bar, it's that same dish that they walked by in the original movie. It had enough callbacks for it. But there was that guy who was the worst Han Solo, and they were chasing down Agent May from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Great episode overall. With the new season of The Mandalorian coming along, I was looking back at whenever we were on the Jibber Jabber website where we were breaking down the new episodes of The Mandalorian as they happened, and at one point after the Agent May's bounty hunter assassin is left for dead and she's clearly not quite dead, you see someone walk up with a cape and you're like, oh, a lot of people thought that maybe it was the Mandalorian and he was going to recruit her for the gang. That didn't happen. Some people thought it was Carl Weathers' Grief Karga and it wasn't him. But a lot of people had also noticed that there were the spur sounds when he walked, which were always added when Boba Fett was on screen. So I was like, I think that might be Boba Fett. A lot of other people thought similarly. And now it's been confirmed that Boba Fett is in episode 5 of the next season. And there's a good chance that Tamora Morrison is also playing Captain Rex, since Ahsoka is going to show up in some capacity, and they're sort of conjoined at the hip ever since the whole Order 66 thing happened. So
I always assumed that the cape was the guy who showed up at the end of season 1, the Imperial guy.
Oh, Moff Gideon.
Yeah.
That's a decent one that I don't think a lot... I think because we hadn't been introduced to the character yet, no one had assumed that it might have been. But it could be that he is re-employing her, and that's a really logical step to go. But I think with the spurs and with the announcement that we're getting Boba Fett again, that we can probably guesstimate that was, in fact, Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But it made me think about something that... So there's a book called Star Wars Aftermath, and it takes place after the fall of the final Death Star. Given the name. Kind of a giveaway. And at one point, these people come across a sand crawler, and they find Boba Fett's armor. It's not specifically name-dropped, but it's Mandalorian armor that's been eaten up like it's been, broken down by acid, as one might see in the mouth.
10,000 years.
Yeah, which always also brought up the point, the Sarlacc pit. You're going to die of dehydration in the desert or malnourishment. So does that mean that it merges as one being and sustains you for 10,000 years to make you suffer until your final cell is absorbed into a hive mind?
That means if Boba Fett did manage to escape, that means he's partially immortal because now he's part 10,000-year-old.
Or it just means he has a lot of gnarly scars from the acid eating away at him.
In which case you don't have to get Tamora Morrison to play him.
You can, because he's actually 10 years older than Boba Fett should be at the time of that. Boba Fett should be 40. Tamora is 50-something. But I would also argue that in a world where you're getting shot at all the time, it's fine to have aged a little faster.
He doesn't look like he's aged.
No, he looks tough guy old. He doesn't look like frail old. Him and Jeff Goldblum were both people that no matter how old they get, you're going to be they can still do the exact same thing they did 5 years ago. Admittedly, Jeff Goldblum looks like he'll be joining a circus and Tamora Morrison looks like he could beat up a biker gang. But it brought me to the point of, like, the cape. Previously, Boba Fett had a little bit of, like, a shoulder shawl, which is a callback to the poncho on the Man with No Name, because that's what inspired him. The Man with No Name had the flat brim across his hat, and the silhouette, hence giving you the T shape on the Mando's face, and the shoulder shawl, and the way his head was cocked to one side, and the way he stood, all inspired by Clint Eastwood's character. However, with his armor having been eaten up, and proof that he now has a cape that's different as well, that confirms in my mind that we're getting a brand new Boba Fett armor set. We're seeing Boba Fett in a brand new look.
So is he going to be that Red Ranger guy that was seen in Episode 7? That, like, he was a gunslinger type who had, like, red armor.
Crimson Corsair?
That one.
No, that's an entirely different character with its own backstory, unfortunately. But a very cool character who's basically a space swashbuckling pirate.
Yarr.
He actually has a book where he goes with his crew on search for Count Dooku's lost treasure.
Treasure.
But it kind of makes me wonder, you know, with these new characters, what do you think Boba Fett's new armor is going to look like? You know, I mean...
Right, well, we can kind of extrapolate logically based off... They introduced the sort of head of the Mandalorians who had, like, that Spartan-looking helmet.
Yeah.
So...
But that could have been a leftover from when Darth Maul was the ruler of Mandalore.
Yeah. My thought is, there's a good chance it's going to look... I'm thinking something Destiny-like.
Okay.
But maybe with a different helmet that's... maybe it has a bit more of a monstrous face, like a Rancor-type stylized mouth.
What makes me curious about it, though, is that... Because there's a group of stormtroopers called Death Watch that... So there's Death Watch that in the Rebels TV series, they're not actually the people fighting the good guys. They're fighting alongside the Rebellion, and they're true Mandalorians. Whereas House Saxon, which is a Mandalorian clan, joins up with the Empire and creates the Imperial Super Commandos, which are based on Ralph McQuarrie's original concept art for Mandalorian armor for Boba Fett. And so they are basically Mandalorians at the service of the Empire. But anyway, with the Super Commandos, and in fact, the leader of the Super Commandos, so the founder of them, is one of the Mandalorians in the Siege of Mandalore arc that you watch in Clone Wars. So, you know, you've already seen him a little bit. He's the one who calls Darth Maul on the communicator. He's like, hey, help us. He's like, no, I don't think I will. And you're like, oh, Darth Maul's kind of a terrible person. Not a great leader.
He only tried to kill a child the first time we saw him.
You know what? Snap judgments are how you make enemies, not friends. Anyway, I'm just personally excited about something that feels like no one is discussing. The idea that Boba Fett, who has one of the most iconic looks in Star Wars, is going to be reintroduced onto a show that feels the most like classic Star Wars that anything has, arguably, since I would say it feels more like the original trilogy than the prequels and the Clone Wars. Like, it is a perfect distillation of what makes Star Wars feel that way.
I have a theory.
Well, can I finish my sentence?
Sure.
I just can't believe no one's talking about the fact that one of the most iconic characters in Star Wars history is going to get a brand new look when his style has kind of set the definition of what cool bounty hunters look like in the Star Wars universe since the 70s or 80s. And we're in a world that's being designed by people who have so captured the original trilogy that it's like George Lucas in his prime all over again.
My theory for what it'll look like. It'll be a sort of gunslinger from Destiny. So it'll look like side cape maybe, or like the full cape.
Yeah, he clearly has a full cape in that scene.
The mask will be Mandalorian metal, but it will
Beskar.
It will be molded to like almost a statue's face, like the all oligarch in Krypton.
Yeah.
So it will be molded almost like a Roman statue of Tamora Morrison's face.
That would be scary.
Yeah, because then it has like this very Roman look to it.
I don't know. I feel like they could they could lean further into the unused concept art for Boba Fett. They could do a remix of different Mandalorian designs. They could do something totally original, like what you just said, or they could even do it where he doesn't even wear a helmet anymore, or he doesn't wear it all the time, because something I've discussed with my wife is it's weird that the Mandalorians we see in the Clone Wars and in Rebels even, they take their helmets off all the time to talk, but then in the Mandalorian it's very clear that entire sect of Mandalorians, you can't ever remove your mask without, never being allowed to put it back on again. And I mean, the Mandalorian takes it off when he's in private. We see that a little bit in the Seven Samurai episode where he goes up against the chicken walker to help that fishing village, which is actually, I think, my favorite episode of The Mandalorian. Because it was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, Opie's daughter, aka the girl from Jurassic World and several other things.
Yeah, which is crazy to think that she was able to make something that good.
I mean, she's talented. She comes from talented people. But she really captured the fact that the Mandalorian is, for the first time in his life, considering a life that isn't about violence, because he's found a place where he's happy. And it's only when the child is in harm's way again that he realizes that he can never have that, or at least he can't yet. And it's sort of like a tragic, sad thing. And you're getting all of that without ever seeing Pedro Pascal's face. It's an incredibly talented cast. And 90% of those sets, like, even whenever, you remember the scene where the Mandalorian is sitting out on a rock and he's repairing his chest armor after fighting that big horned creature, and the child force lifts it up? I think it's like second or third episode.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there and he's fixing it, and he's got a wound on his arm, and the child comes over to try and heal it with force healing, but he doesn't know that's a thing yet. And then people would see it later on in the Mandalorian series and think, wow, that's super cool. And then they'd see it in episode 9 and be like, oh, but she can force heal. It's like, a baby did it. You were fine with that. If you're going to complain, be consistent.
If the problem is the fact that, like, why Jedi couldn't do it?
Because the Jedi had lost their way, and they were more about habits than they were about being in touch with the Force. I literally just watched this whole thing.
Funny how they never had that one sentence that you just said ever in any of the movies.
No, I'm not saying that it wasn't a perfect series. I was just saying that I understood it. I think that the sequels...
I think it doesn't deserve to be understood.
I think that the sequels will be like the prequels, where adults will kind of make fun of them, where children will enjoy them, and then 10 years of supplemental video games and cartoons and comic books, when new characters and new context and fleshed out stories, people will love it so much that, 10, 15 years from now, when they make the next trilogy, people will make fun of those, and they'll look back at the sequels and be like, well, why isn't it like that? These are just the sequels for the next generation. And that's why I refuse to make fun of the sequels, because I do understand what they were trying to do. I don't agree they did it every time, but I also remember being on the other end of it, where I was like, I love Darth Maul. Qui-Gon Jinn was great. I loved the Clone Wars. I think Jango Fett's the coolest character. I love Count Dooku. I loved those things, and I had to defend them forever. And now the people that liked those movies are adults, so we get to act like it was always accepted, but it wasn't. The guy who played Jar Jar Binks got bullied to near suicide, and the guy who played Anakin in the first movie got bullied so bad he quit filmmaking and ended up with a mental disorder and went to prison. So I'm just... I think Rose was a horrible character. I don't think she's a horrible actress that played her. I just think she had a bad character to play. Hey, Sam!
Yeah. Help! Alright, so topic of sort of some shows are getting remade, some kids shows sort of brought back, given second life. We see that's with Samurai Jack stuff. Problem is, a lot of them...
No, Sam, okay, I thought you were about to leave us again.
A lot of them have to get the short end of the stick. Like, example, mine was Ben 10.
Well, where they get turned into an ugly animation style?
Yeah, which apparently there was a crossover with Generator Rex, where he turned into Upgrade and went over Generator Rex.
Which sounds like the coolest.
Yeah, because he's a cyborg, so he can.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, if you could take any show that had got remade, you essentially go back time and you redo that movie.
Wait, so I can only choose between shows that have been remade, or I get to remake them?
Either or. I'll let you have your own fiction. Something that, just cheeses your onions, that you're just like, I really hate how they did that. They missed opportunity.
I mean, do you have one in mind that you want to jump off the bat with? Because obviously
Ben
I want
10
more. I want more Batman Beyond.
That's true.
Because I definitely grew up wanting
That
more
was something we
Batman.
did in the early time of the podcast. We had the idea of a show vampire, where it's like you could take the
Yeah, it was
seasons from one show.
What
and
would
give
you
them-
sacrifice? Where you can either kill off TV shows or actors and actresses? Because
Yeah, I said
like I would kill so many A-listers for Robin Williams to be back.
I would sacrifice Doctor Who and give that to Firefly, just so that way people.
Oh
would
yeah.
stop.
Well, wait. I thought you said it has to be shows of quality, though. Ha ha! High five. Nice.
Fine. I sacrifice. Oh no.
Here's
No,
what I
can't-
would do.
I can't bring myself to it. I was like, oh, I'll just get rid of some seasons of Star Trek Voyager. That show was entirely good, but like, if that show had a cliffhanger,
Yeah, that would have sucked.
that would have. Like, I'm fine with Fire.
And you wouldn't have ever had 7 of 9 showing up in other things either.
That's true. But she still looks the same.
Yeah, she's incredible. She has kids as old, if not older than us, and she is still on my list
Oh.
of people I want to meet.
Oh. To have sex with?
Yeah.
Neat. In a sort of Turkish bathhouse type situation.
In a, oh, I'm the pizza boy and you don't have any money left to pay me kind of way.
What, you want your fancy is to be in a dead-end job?
I think I would take a few seasons from Friends, because if you have to take them from Quality, and I would give more seasons to 24.
Really?
I like 24, and I genuinely enjoy it. And I was going to originally say some seasons from Castle, because I heard that the last few seasons are not as great, but then I would be having questionable quality in the series. So
Well, my thought was, for bringing up the whole how would you redo it, I thought, okay, Ben 10. If I was told, hey, we're bringing back Ben 10, you're in charge of it. What's the direction we go with? And I'm like, one thing, we're at least keeping the animation style. I understand you want to cut it down. Just hold on there, and just, let's go Ben 10,000 as a show. Because that was a really cool premise of like, yeah, people know about him, and he's a global defender.
I've got it.
Hit me.
Ninja Turtles. Now, the most recent one I ever saw was the one where they're in the future with Casey Jones and
Then after
Kid.
that, they did Back to the Sewers, where they came back from the future.
Did they bring any future technology?
I don't know.
Or did they just essentially reset back to original?
They
I think
went
they
back
gave
to
them
formula,
actual
but
eyes.
yeah, but it worked.
Here's what I would do. One of two options here. One, I think the way I would do it is you make it where there's like some type of interdimensional rift where you find out that the aliens whose ooze made the Ninja Turtles, there's an entire world or like a dimension where that's just what everyone is. So it's like a parallel New York City with only those people, and you have 4 teenagers or like this like children of like Casey Jones and all them. Maybe make it where they had 4 kids and they are like teenagers and they're like, yeah, our parents were always upset after the Ninja Turtles just disappeared, and they go into it and it's the opposite where they're the 4 mutant freaks because they're humans and they're ninjas and samurai, and they each have a different fighting style, like a Viking or a Spartan, and they all have these different aesthetics, and they're in like a semi-future in feudal Japan meshed like San Fran, Tokyo from Big Hero 6. And that's the cartoon show I would give at least a season or 2 of like, okay, this time it's 4 humans stuck in the world of the weird Ninja Turtles, and they're looking for the Ninja Turtles, and like maybe Raphael is the leader of like his own clan of like ninjas.
Dude,
and stuff.
what if the person training them is secretly Splinter, or not Splinter, but he's like
Shredder?
What
That'd be awesome.
But he's
actually.
like keeping it secret. It's like, I made a mistake. My actions tried to create more and more of these monsters, and now they're out of control. And he's repentant. So we
See?
get a good Shredder.
We just accidentally made a great cartoon premise. You
Well,
pitch that to a board, you let them tweak a little bit, throw in a
we'll say,
respectable...
and we say, hey, the entire world is toys that you can sell.
Exactly. And we don't let Michael Bay near it. They're already rebooting the Ninja Turtle movies. Because they're like, these were bad.
They're not even going to try and give it a Bumblebee, where it's like, Donatello, where did you get that hard drive that you stuck on the back of your shell? And he's
Which
like,
would
"It's
totally
a long
be destroyed.
story." Also,
That's the show I would do.
because of how turtles work, they are their shell. So he literally dug into bone to put in that stuff.
Let's not think about that.
Like Michael Bay didn't.
I would pay to see like, you know, like a Viking type dude fight ninjas and like just basically like Deadliest Warrior but with mutants.
Yeah.
Because how often you get to see like a cyber Viking fight ninjas, and then all of a sudden it's like, Oh, I recognize you. It's like, who's that? Oh, it's me, Leonardo. Which, by the way, James Arnold Taylor, voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi for 18 years, who is also Johnny Quest, was also Leonardo in the TMNT movie that had Patrick Stewart and Chris Evans.
Yeah. He was Johnny Quest?
Yeah, he's also Johnny Quest!
You realize you sent Johnny Test in the text message.
Oh, yeah, no, I meant Test. Johnny Quest was... They're so confusing.
That's immense.
Quest is the one with his best friend Haji, and I genuinely don't know if Haji was the name that was like... Was it a racist thing they named him Haji, or is it just because in the army they called brown people Haji as, like, a sort of racist way to refer to the enemy? I don't know which came first, and I don't know which one is racist, so I don't know which one not to talk about. And it's really stressful. But now I've talked about both.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, which, by the way, can we bring up the horrible situation Johnny Test had? His two sisters constantly doing experiments on him, and his dog.
Yeah, it's like they had a premise for a porno, and they made it into a kid's show.
Like, that's a real psychopathic stuff. And don't tell mom or dad, or we'll get...
See, that's the line you hear in those a lot.
And you're like, geez, what's wrong with these two psychopaths that have only distinguishing factors is a moon and sun earrings? Like...
I'm sorry, did you see Parent Trap? They didn't even have earrings.
Dude, they're freaking nightmares.
I think I proved my point.
Dude, I would love for a modern, sequel to Parent Trap where Lindsay Lohan plays two people.
One of them became a drug addict, one of them didn't. And the drug addict is trying to take over her sister's life to finally have semblance of normality again. It's a psychological thriller.
The Sibling Trap.
Give it like a Blumhouse or like a Studio 24 budget where like they have to be really creative and clever and they have good writing because they don't have big budgets. Because those are people that gave us like Upgrade and stuff.
Netflix freaking did a thing where it was like girl wakes up with amnesia and it's like, hey, you okay? And like boyfriend's like, hey, so glad you're okay. That stalker nearly killed you. Like, and apparently she had a stalker and police were talking about it. But they're like, but she's like, are you the stalker or are you my boyfriend? And you're not sure. But freaking London Tipton is the woman who wakes up, and it was a thriller starring her. And I was like, what's happening? This is amazing.
Somewhere along the line when you started saying that, I had an idea. You were talking about...
wakes up, stalkers going after her.
Or it was before that. It was something you said right before that. Netflix did a thing.
Yeah, it was like a Netflix thriller. Whatever. Sam, what would your show be? Like, if you could remake it, give it a second life.
Legend of Korra, again, more of it.
Season 1 hates the person she ends up dating at the end of it. Hates it.
Just like real life.
But then, they just are indifferent to each other for the rest of the show, and then at the end they're like, let's get married. And you're like...
The only thing I can say...
They had books that explained
So I didn't watch the follow-up series because I don't hate myself.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Though,
but I remember you telling me that it basically ends with them like, we'll just merge the spirit realm and the normal realm, which means that centipede that steals faces is just like your neighbor. And he's like, hey, give me your soul!
Yeah, and you can't show emotion or he steals your face.
Exactly.
And it's just a whole... And Azula, the voice of Azula, came back to voice a spider woman who, weaves, souls or something.
Of course.
Also, there's a fog there. If you go in there, it slowly drains your memories and stuff, and, you're...
So now those are just in the real world now. So what you're saying is we need our own Legend of Korra set steampunk supernatural series where the Winchesters or an equivalent thereof go out there.
Scooby-Doo.
We need a Scooby-Doo Ghostbuster supernatural thriller set in the world of the Legend of Korra / Avatar The Last Airbender where they're going to try and hunt all that, and you can even have it where one of the monsters is someone who shows you bad live-action Nickelodeon 3D movie remakes of your beloved TV series, and then we can explain that terrible movie that we had to see in the movie theaters. I went to see that for my birthday one time.
Here's what I found.
Sweet God, I was not talking to you.
Oh, that was your watch talking.
It was. All of my, clothing talks back to me. It's like I'm wearing my wife. She's like a symbiote.
You know, there's actually part of the internet that wants Eddie and Venom to be a thing.
Oh, I was wondering. I was really scared.
How does that? He's in your
He's
blood.
already inside of him. Yeah. Eddie's already inside of Venom.
But blood. Venom is in his blood.
No, he isn't.
At the end, he's hearing the voice. It's all the outside bits were dead, which I think they're going to try and go sort of an anti-Venom route.
Oh, well, because in the comics it was always that he was an exterior level, and the reason that Carnage was so dangerous is because he bonded at a cellular level. So he could straight up turn his arms into, like, axes and chains because instead of having to just hide the human body parts in it, the human body part was cellularly broken down into whatever weapon it was and then merged, making him sort of like the Terminator from Dark Fate, actually.
Which means he could just melt down and go...
Exactly. That's what made him so terrifying. He could turn into a liquid Terminator monster, whereas the other one was sort of like wearing the liquid Terminator as a shell.
And he was already, like, murdering people and writing Carnage in the wall and his blood.
However, it does look like they're getting rid of his Ronald McDonald wig for the second movie.
They really didn't have... They could have just put, like, a little bit of red in
They
his
could have just
shaved
not
head.
made him look like Ronald McDonald.
More of Raggedy Ann.
Also, did you think it was a little cheesy? And I think it's like, there's gonna be Carnage. Like, we get it. We know who you are. And everyone who didn't get who it was just gonna go online, read who it was from a website, and then act like they knew all along. Also,
I don't even remember what I was originally talking
as bad as a movie as Venom was, it is kind of fun to watch. Like,
Oh,
it's a
it's not.
terrible movie, but it's fun.
Especially when you watch Nando's, like, breakdown of how he would have fixed it.
I haven't seen that. And we are not plugging other creators here. Now, if you don't mind, check out Kevin James' YouTube channel.
Hey, I did not even mention his podcast, Mostly Nitpicking. Look at it where you find your podcasts.
You dirty sellout whore.
Hey,
We're breaking up.
it's not even like I brought up the...